Be sure and tell them Large Marge sent ya.
In the 90s, we were just teeny tykes. We liked our movies and our bikes. We wanted to be DJs, but we were just teeny gals. So we went off to college and we remained best pals. 20 years later, we're still watching flicks and we're bringing you the feedback bit by bit. Sweetie and Sweety are here to say it's the Large Marge Santa's podcast. Hey.
Hey guys, welcome to the Large Marge Tennis Podcast, your favorite podcast where two Sweety sisters talk about movies that shaped their childhood. I'm Sweety.
And I'm Sweety.
Today we did everyone's favorite Christmas movie ever. It is The Exorcist.
Just kidding. It's an Antichrist movie.
Oh my God. See what we did there? See what we did there? Okay, so this might seem strange to many people, and we're not joking when we say that this movie shaped our childhood. And it's an odd choice to pick if you look at our whole catalog and you're like, okay, like Babe, like Tom Hanks films, like feel-good sports, like ragtag teamers. So this movie's a little different, for sure. But for some reason, we watched it as little kids and really enjoyed it.
Well, I would say you watched it as a little kid. I watched it hiding behind the couch at your sleepover and then saw something and was like, oh, and like ran up to my room and never again saw it until I was older, and I'll get into it. But yeah, you were more the fan. I was the secret, like, what is this?
So, okay, so I'll tell you a little, like the origin story of this movie within our like frame of reference. So I didn't like scary movies as a kid. Like slasher movies, let's say. So your Nightmare on Elm Street, your Friday the 13th. Very scared of slasher movies. But sleepovers are all about like getting your friends together and like watching a scary movie. So I knew about The Exorcist and knew that it was like scary, but like more like demon scary, not slasher scary. Like, let's say it wasn't like people being murdered, right? It was like a concept of scary. And that really more like something I thought I could handle as someone who was like scared of slasher stuff. So starting from the age of like 12 or 13 up till, I don't know, 16 or 17, as one would do on your birthday, you have a bunch of girls sleep over, and I would pick to watch this movie every year. So it became a tradition just to keep watching it and watching it. And like you're at a sleepover, so you're like kind of paying attention, kind of not. And there's obviously like some pretty like serious themes around here that as a 12 or 13-year-old, I'm sure I didn't get. But obviously the visuals of this girl being possessed are the ones that like really stay with you and are the scary parts. And as Sweety said, much younger, you know, she's almost 4 years younger than myself. So she'd sneak down there, you know, technically like not invited to the sleepover, but like sort of was because she lived there.
You didn't want me there, though.
Even though I love you to bits, and I'm sure if you would have been like, can I come too? I would have been like, sure. No? Oh, no.
Pretty sure you didn't let me. I mean, a little bit. You didn't want me to ruin friend time. I don't know.
Yeah, but you didn't do anything. You were pretty quiet. You just kind of like sat there.
Yeah. I don't know. Whatever.
Right. Anyway, so, but even though I've seen this movie like over, I don't know, 5 times at least from watching this at these sleepovers, it's still like not one I really remember like that well. And when we watched it tonight, it was like all these new things kind of like popped up and stuff that I noticed. And I know like Sweety here had a long couple-year career as a illustrious horror movie blogger. So I know this factored into your horror movie blog, right? So you wrote about it in a post and you had watched it then. So like you've seen it much more recently than I have. And so now it's like a little different for us. But yeah, so this was a movie that we definitely watched young and definitely left an impression on us, I think, just as like a really an early scary movie for us, right?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people's top like 3 scariest things they've ever seen is always The Exorcist. I think that this movie has a tendency to, when you watch it on the younger side of things, you kind of see the more comedic side of it because of all the swears and the dirty language and all of that. But then there's like this golden age where it's just scary enough that like you have been to enough Sunday school classes where you're like, shit, this could be real. And then that's, I think, where it gets pretty scary. So you just have to find that middle ground. And luckily for me, on that night I saw it by myself in the basement when I was, I don't know, 14, 12, 13. I don't know.
Was it on TV?
Yeah, it was on TV, and yeah, I just had a sleepless night, but we'll talk about it in depth later. For now, let's remind peeps what the flick's about.
So I guess that means it's time for the Sweety synopsis. Yeah!
Sweeties!
Let the power of Christ compel you. Let the power of Christ compel you.
You would not be a good exorcist.
Oh, You'd be like,
Flubbing the words.
that devil would read me like a book. Are you kidding? He'd be like, I know everything that scares you. Here's rats. Here's stairs.
I'm going to pretend I'm a vampire outside your window.
Oh my God, it'd be horrible. It'd be a horrible exorcist.
Oh, God. All right. So, Chris McNeil is an actress who is currently filming a movie on location in Washington, D.C. Well, Georgetown, which is different, I guess. Okay, it's a section of D.C., Sweety tells me. So, sort of right, sort of wrong. She is living there with her 12-year-old daughter, Reagan, an assistant lady nanny person, some title, we're not sure, a maid, and a couple Nazi, like a Nazi butler.
He's a Nazi? I didn't get that part. He's like the driver, like chauffeur
That's
person.
why the director was like, they got in a fight at the party because he was like, blah, 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 the Gestapo, like the Nazis. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't get that part. I thought that was just a guest at a party. I didn't know it was the driver guy. Okay, got it.
Got it. Anyways, so beginning of the movie, this priest is like digging shit up in Iraq, and he finds this statue of a scary face. They don't tell us really anything about it, right?
Well, that whole scene is like so silent. Like there's like almost no. There's a couple of like subtitle language kind of things, but it's just like very, very silent, and it's very spooky, and it's like an archaeological dig in this section of northern Iraq. So if you're thinking about that like area of the world as sort of like the cradle of civilization, so that's where like all like Babylon, like all these like early cultures, Sumerian, like almost like pre-Christian cultures sort of like existed. So that's like what you assume that this priest. Do you know he's a priest then? Because he's wearing any priest garb. I guess like unless you don't really know, you just like see all these people digging, and you see this priest like find these artifacts, let's say, and they're kind of like pre-Christian, like we said, artifacts of like, I don't know, like old statues, and one's like a little like handheld thing, and he's very like entranced with it, and it's almost like taking him away. What is that called? Like hypnotizing him, like almost a little bit. Like he knows like something is up with this like sculpture. And then cuts to like back to like USA, Georgetown, this like woman's house and her daughter Reagan.
Yes. So, I mean, we get a little snippets here and there of some unusual things. Reagan found a Ouija board randomly in a closet and is now communicating with a fellow named Captain Howdy. Chris isn't that scared about this, even though I'm like, she's 12 years old. Like, it's a little old for the old invisible friend trick. You know what I mean?
Anytime someone's like, oh, I don't need like another person to play the Ouija board with. It like totally works just with me. Demon present. Like, hello, red alert. Bad news.
Bad news, Grizz. So little by little, like things like that keep happening. Oh, okay. Just stop feeding me lines. I'm going to do the synopsis the way I want to. God, need your bullshit list.
Love making lists.
Anyway, so Chris has a party one night, and then in the middle of this, Reagan comes downstairs after from sleeping, and she tells this astronaut who's like set to go on the Gemini, whatever year this is. She's like, "You're gonna die up there," and he's like, "What?" And then she just like pees everywhere, and so her mom just thinks she's sick, so she takes her back upstairs, and then there's an incident where the bed starts shaking all crazy, so the mom's like, "All right, doctor, now." So they go to the doctor, a couple psychiatrists, brain surgeons. People are like, oh, it's a tumor. Just kidding. Nothing's there. They don't know what it is. So they do like psychiatrists, but she just keeps getting worse, and she gets like scarier and scarier. Starts saying crazy shit, swearing, scary demon voices, is like puking pea soup on the regs, even though I don't know, is she eating pea soup? Like, where's that coming from? It's just getting really scary. So finally a psychiatrist is like, have you ever thought about exorcism? And she's like, what? So luckily Chris McNeil knows a lot of priests. She has 2 of them at her party.
Right. Apparently, like, in the 70s, like, priests were, like, a legit part of your social circle because you see priests at parties, like, being, like, the one guy left over with, like, the 5 people late night at the party being like, who wants another show tune? That's, like, one priest. And then priests are, like, at bars and hanging out with people. So it's like, I don't know about you, but, like, have you ever seen a priest at a bar? Anybody? Have you ever been at a party with a priest is at? Anybody? So like priests seemed more in like the daily life of people in the so this takes place in 1973. So apparently like you know some priests, and when you know some priests, they're like, hey, BT dubs, I think she's possessed. Here's a number you should call.
So she gets in touch with Father Karis, who is like a psychiatric priest.
Well, he is a psych. So
he has a psych degree, but is a priest now.
So he became a priest, and they sent him through.
He became a priest, and they sent him through med school. Interesting. Okay, former boxer. He's strange life. His at the beginning, his mom. There's this thing with his mom, and she died. It was sad. He's kind of like crushed about that and wants to leave the priesthood. And then this happens, and he kind of is like, well, there hasn't been an exorcist in a long time. Like, people don't really believe them in anymore, but we have mental illnesses that like explain that stuff. And she's like, well, just come look at her. And so he does. And it shakes him because Reagan starts like talking in his mom's voice and is saying things that only like Damien would. Damien?
Yep, Father Damien.
Or Damien. Why is it Damie?
I think it's Damie. Why you
Damie? Oh, okay. He's like, okay, this is crazy. So he like does some recordings, gets the okay, and then they tell him to call this other guy, Father Marin, who is the priest from the beginning. They're like, you need an expert. He's done some, so like call him up. He comes. They do an exorcism. It's hard on Reagan. She's probably gonna die soon, and at some point, just like demon things happen. And whoops, Father Marin dead.
What are demon things that happen?
Like, cause a heart attack. I don't know. Like, she just like gave him a heart attack. So he's dead, and Damien's like, fuck you, motherfucker, and then fights the demon, and then Fort is like, come into me, and the demon possesses Damien, and he's like, no, and then jumps out the window, falls to his death, dies, Reagan's back to normal, all is well. And that's it.
Wow, that is like a crazy, great, all we've ever wanted in a synopsis from a pretty like kind of complicated movie. So good job, Sweety. Hey. Wow, you really got that synopsis down. So that's like kind of the gist. So I will say that like I personally am very drawn to demonic possession stories. I think they're like super fascinating. And as I've talked about, I think like Poltergeist, I might have talked about this. There's like, okay, now I've come to a point where it's like slasher stuff and like all that fake stuff like doesn't really scare me. Like the scary that could potentially be real life are the ones that are like the most scary to me. And I think,
okay, I'm sorry, but how is somebody killing other people, a human with a knife, not as scary to you?
No, like a Freddy Krueger like haunting your dreams is like not that scary to me.
Slashers are like actual people though.
Are they? I don't know. I just think they're just like too hammed up or whatever. But there's something like so mysterious about ones that involve like afterlives. You're talking about like spooky ghosts or like a poltergeist kind of a thing, or a demon kind of one, because those are like sort of out of your control. Not that like psychopaths with like wielding knives and axe murders are really in your control either. But this seems like, and also in that realm of sort of like unknown, which is a lot about what this movie is, right? Because you're like, you don't, you have these priests who do like know about exorcisms and stuff. But as Father Damien says, like that being possessed was something that in early centuries was something that happened very commonly, because really what it was mental illness, and people didn't know how to explain mental illness, so they jumped to the religious conclusion, which they did with almost everything, right? There was just that like threat of God in every sort of action, and everything was blamed on like God, and he was angry at you, so that's why you died, or whatever like that. But you actually had mental illness back in the whatever century, and to explain it, they'd be like, oh, they're possessed, right? But I don't know. I like still believe that there could be possession, because like I do think that there is some like evil out there. And it's not, I don't think it's necessarily like a devil, but I think there's something with like evil energy that like exists in the world that can like consume people and make them sort of like do bad things. Or like kind of like what I said with Poltergeist, how it was just like a lot of like evil energy that like created that beast thing in Poltergeist, right? Mm-hmm. And you could say like that was a demon. Now in this movie, it does seem like a little bit more like that is like a certain kind of demon, let's say, because it felt like a person to me, and whether like that demon wanted you to think he was kind of a person. But, and this is still my open question, how did the demon get into Reagan? Like what made her like an easy victim, let's say, or like an open vessel that like, why didn't the demon like come into the mom? Why wasn't it like, you know, what made that?
So first of all, in the beginning of the movie, the window is always open in Reagan's room, which has always been strange to me. Like, did he come in the window? Like he flew in one night, was like, oh, hey, child. Secondly, in the beginning, there's these noises in the attic, which happen frequently, and they're kind of unexplainable. We relate them somehow to what's happening, but it's never like a full circle that's drawn for us. But like from what I gather in that is that he was like up in the attic. Like,
I think he was in the house.
Not this whole time, but like, I don't know, he just like got in there. I don't know, he's a demon, he like do whatever he wants. Secondly, in the third Exorcist, which I highly recommend in the book as well, it's called Legion, it's amazing. They go into this thing where demons have the tendency to possess older people and people whose minds are kind of damaged in some way. Okay. And Reagan's kind of going through some psychiatric changes, I would say, at this point in time, as her parents are divorced or whatever, and her dad's not really calling her, so she's feeling anxious and like nervous. Her mom says something about nerves. It's just nerves, the doctor said. Take your pills. So I think there's something in her mind that was already a little rattled and like out of it, which caused this to happen.
That's what I thought too. Because that's what I thought, they were like planting that seed of like this sort of unrest between her parents, right? So you can tell that like because the early scenes when you see her, she's like lovely. She's like a lovely 12-year-old girl. You can see her mom and her have this like great relationship, but there's like definitely some questions that she has about what is happening with her parents, right? So like the first thing is like she thinks her mom is like maybe dating someone on like the film crew or something like that, and she's always like, oh, do you like love this guy? Do you want him to come on our birthday like outing or something like that? And then it's her birthday and her dad like doesn't call, so her mom is on the phone like with this hotel in France, like screaming out of her mind, being like, I need to connect with this guy, like he's not there, why isn't he there? And you can see her kind of being like unsettled by that. So I think you're right. I think that was like leaving an open door for like she was a willing, like an easy target, let's say, for like whatever the demon was. But if the demon is just like able to just come in through a window, like what? We are fucked. Don't they have to ask to come inside?
That is a vampire. It's different. Yeah. So when I was little, the things that scared me the most about this were like the high Reaganisms, I would say, where Reagan's like super possessed and is just saying really scary things. Her voice is all scary and she does scary things. That, to me, when I was little, was the scariest thing. As I got older, I found all these other kind of quiet moments of terror that really spoke to me more so than those scenes. Because I do think that the exorcism and the scenes before that, where she's really violent and swearing and things like that, are scary, but you're more able to laugh at them, I think, because it's like so crazy that this little girl is like, your mother sucks cocks in hell. And so it's just that. But these other scenes are really scary. Yeah. So in order these are, and I already talked about some of these, but the noises in the attic, super creepy. It's not like a demon. There's like maybe some wing action in there, up there. Like it's creepy. It's creepy as fuck. The Ouija board, scary. When the mom touches it, the plank like shoots out of her hand, and that's just like a little thing that like they never revisit. They're just like, oh yeah, magic powers, like no big deal. Obviously, demon again. Number 3, the statue that gets desecrated in the church is so creepy, and I always would miss that scene when I was little because it's so quick. So many scenes of this have happened so quickly. So Reagan like left her room in the middle of the night and like used those paints she had to make that like bird statue because it was the same colors. Well, that's what's implied. Yeah, and she like desecrated the statue. And then after that, there's this brief shot of the scary demon face, which is kind of subliminal like imagery there that they just like keep slipping in. But that face really scares the shit out of me, and I hate it so much. The the whole idea of Captain Howdy just being a thing, the bed shaking, the part where the housekeeper, nanny, assistant lady is like, come here quick, and then shows him that there's writing in on her stomach that says help me. It's fucked up. It's scary. And again, quiet. Like that could have been like the demon could have woken up when they were like examining that, and you would have gotten a real jump scare in that. But there's so much restraint in this, and that is just like, so you look at it and you're just like, fuck.
Well, that's what I meant to mention this to you when we were watching it, because like you are a big person who hates jump scares, right? And there would be I could think of 10 right now where they could have done jump scares that would have like scared the shit out of people. And they don't do it. There's nothing that comes out. There's nothing really like that does that. It's all like kind of all like surrounding Reagan and the creepy voice and stuff like that. But then, like the quiet kind of scary scenes. One that sticks out for me is that one where that father, who's the old one? Marin. So he goes back in, and Damien at this point, Father Damien he's basically like the demon has gotten to him, so that he's like, you're out, tap out, buddy, like you're done, you're compromised. So he's like, go downstairs. So then the old man has to do it himself, Father Marin. So he's doing it, but then like all of a sudden, I think Damien like it's too quiet or something like that. So he like goes up there and he's like slumped on the bed, and like you see Reagan is like in this most satisfied look on his face, like like look what I did, like. But then he tries to bring the Father Marin back to life, and he's like kind of like smacking him on the chest, but like Father Marin's like basically dead, and there's holy water like on its side, like kind of slowly like spitting out, and they just like kind of like hold on that scene, and it's like so creepy because the symbolism of just like the holy water just like being like completely wasted, and like, and then the spirit of that, which is like a holy man, also his spirit is like completely like dripping out too, is so creepy. And it's just like all like those kind of things. And then the end scene is like pretty terrifying too, which I didn't even like really like look into until we saw it this time. Like I guess I didn't realize like some parts of it.
Like what?
Well, okay, so he goes, come in. He's like, take me, like blah blah blah. And then he, you don't really see anything until his eyes light up, right? So like that's when you know like the demon is in him. So he's about to kill her though. He has this look on his face like, okay, I'm going to kill this girl now, because he's so evil. But there's so much good in Damien, that like Father Damien, that he's able to resist it just enough time. He only has like a window of like a half a second to resist, to then jump out the actual window and kill himself. And that's amazing. I mean, that guy was like so pure of heart. He obviously was in so much turmoil. I mean, we can talk about it, like his mom stuff, but like, I mean, it was kind of like unbelievable. And I think he like never really thought that he was like a good priest, or like was making a difference. And he says that at one point, because he's like been transferred from wherever he was in New York and then to this DC branch of the Catholic Church. And he's not feeling like he's really making a difference, and it's too hard here. And like, I want to get out of this. So I think he finally like did feel like he was making a difference with this, and he was able to do something in a very like tragic way. But I never really like saw that I guess it was just that one part where he almost like turned evil and was going to kill her, and then was like, no, and then jumped.
Well, it's just, I mean, the demon is just kind of after Reagan. Right. Like he wants that to claim that soul for his own, I think. So that's what I think that killing her scene comes from. So the time that I saw this by myself, this was like maybe the days where I would like stay up really late on a school night for no reason. Maybe it's online chatting to somebody I had a crush on, no big deal. But this was on TV, and I was kind of like half watching it, half on AOL. And at some point, a moth like flew in my eye, and I thought I got it out, but then like in my head I was like, what if that moth like went into my brain like from my eye, and like something triggered something in like my temporal lobe, I'm gonna get possessed now, and like the demon knows I'm open. So I couldn't go to sleep that whole night. I kept the lights on. I stayed up reading like Nancy Drew books in my room all night. I was so tired the next day. It was crazy. But that's what I remember, like just being so scared that like just that something could just get you like all of a sudden without warning, and it just that idea really traumatized me. So that was my big memory from this film.
Whoa. Yeah, and I'll like piggyback on some other memories. So like as I said, like I watched this on sleepovers, so we were just like a gaggle of 12-year-old girls just like laughing at shit. So as Sweety said, like it's funny because of the very inappropriate language. So like the demon is like very into like being inappropriately sexual, and there's some like really gruesome parts. Like that part, the masturbation with the crucifix is like still like extremely traumatizing to me. And the part where she like rubs her mom's face in it is like unbelievable. That is like the most inappropriate scene like I've ever seen in a movie. They don't show a lot, but it's just like, thank God. But it is nasty, man. And then this watch, like there was the pea soup one, which is always like kind of funny now because like again, movies get parodied so much that it's like, like it's funny, but like I almost wish like there wasn't parodies around because it does really kind of like kill it for you. And then the part that I like kind of forgot about was the long tongue part. So it's like this one part where like she sticks out her tongue and she's just like a long, disgusting demon tongue. It is so traumatizing. I think that was the part that scared me the most tonight just because I forgot about it. And I was like, oh, like sketchy demon tongue. And she has this like weird flicking with it. Like, so gross. But yeah, so it's like, I mean, it's really like a mixed bag now between like being completely freaked out by parts, but also because we laughed like a bunch. Like your mother sucks cocks in hell. Like that one is like now kind of like a hilarious line. Like, let's be real.
Well, we like to say it to each other, or I do anyways, on occasion as an insult. I just think it's funny. Or like Liz and I had a joke about it. I don't know. So on my horror blog, I did a thing for a little while called the Scary Face Club. And every month I would talk about 5 scary faces from horror movies that are now in the club. And the Scary Face Club was started by 4 or 5 of the faces that I deemed the scariest. And then I did a poll to find out which face people thought was the scariest face. And that person would be the Scary Face Club president or the president of the Scary Face Club. So guess who won? Pazuzu, the demon. Everybody, thank you. Yep. So that scary demon face, not the Reagan face, but the face that flashes briefly.
Why is it called Pazuzu again?
Pazuzu is the demon. The demon is named in the book, so that's why people assume that. It's not named in the movie, but there is a parallel drawn to that demon in the beginning. So because I think people in the book just knew that was Pazuzu, that like, or in the other ones he was too. Yeah, so he's the demon.
Pazuzu.
It's like a car. He's like the demon ruler of the winds or something is like his deal. But yeah, super crazy, super scary. So he's the president of the Face Club. So I did like a Photoshop, like the Babysitters Club, but with like Pazuzu as Christy, the president. And then the other ones I picked, I forget. I mean, the other ones were like other scary faces in horror movies. So good times. Anyways, look that up on my blog, The Horror Digest, if you want some more.
Oh, totally. Okay, so I'm going to do trivia kind of like towards the end because I got like some goodies from that. But I have some like thematic stuff I want to discuss. We're getting real deep here. Ready? Okay. All right. So my first is, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but like the mental illness versus like demonic possession thing. It's like interesting to me because it's like, how do you tell the difference?
Well, I think for the most part, demon possessions like aren't a real thing. I know you want to believe that they are, but like the evidence just isn't there.
But
so
this movie shows that like
this
she
is not
was
reality. This is not reality, though. This is a movie. It's not like a real thing. William Peter Blatty based it on a real case that he heard about, but it was still never actually like. There's never been a recognized exorcism.
There never has
which
been one.
Not like a real one, I don't think. Because they always come out that it's like, oh, that she was suffering from schizophrenia. Like they starved her for like 12 days trying to exorcise her, and she died of hunger or whatever because of what they did to her. Like it's never like the demon killed her or anything like that. And most of the stuff is like even in this movie, like the part where the demon knows that Damien's mother died. He asked the mother after, did you know my mother recently died? And she said yes, because at that party where Regan pisses on the floor, the priest is telling her mom in like the living room about Father Karras and how his mother just passed away. So it's entirely possible that Regan overheard that, because not too long after that, she comes down the stairs and pees on the floor. So like she could have been awake then and heard that. Yeah. So that's one possible explanation. Secondly, her father works a lot in Europe. So there's like some hinting that like she learned Latin somehow, or like those other languages she was speaking, just being in Europe and like listening to that. So like that's a possible explanation for that. So it's all just how you look at it. And it's like, I think in real cases, like that's what's happened. Like they're like, oh, she did know that language. Like she was just crazy. It was just like in the back of her mind, and she just said it. So I don't know. That's what that is.
Yeah. No. I think like that's true, and like they do an interesting job here, because he's like, oh, like you said, like you would have to like speak a language that there's definitely no way you know. The holy water thing where he sprinkles holy water on it. And it freaks out, but really it was just tap water. So they do try to do like all these like evidentiary reasons, but I think like they do figure out that it's not a mental thing by the end, because of like how badly like stuff is going in that room, and like how would you like change the temperature in the room, and like, you know, your face is all like fucked up like that, and like, you know, like apart from the like clearly physical symptoms that maybe a body is able to manifest from like extreme duress like that, which can happen. I mean, like that's like the whole stigmata thing, right? So that's like probably the next thing that comes close to something like this. And do you ever remember seeing Stigmata, that movie from like the 90s? Another one I brought to a sleepover. Man, these like religious ones. I'm not even religious. Like it's weird. So again, like stigmata, which has been like a recorded thing, but they think that like psychologically, like you can make yourself bleed from like certain areas of your body just by like thinking hard enough, basically. Like you can be that involved in like basically like religion and that whole kind of thing to like make your body do that, which is like insanity, which I guess is a form of insanity.
Or pregnancy. Remember that CSI where like the creepy, I think it's Rachel Evan Wood is like the girl who like thinks she's pregnant, and she like, starts lactating in the interview, and they're like, what? But she ain't pregnant because she just thinks she is.
Well, the mind is like a incredible thing. Like basically like your mind, like there's a lot of, well, not a lot of people, but it's been pretty confirmed now that like the body and mind are like completely connected. Like it's just like your mind can make your body almost do like anything. And they say this at one point, like at one point, one of the doctors is like, well, or the mom's like, but the bed was shaking. Like, how do you explain that? And he's like, well, there's been many instances where if like a woman sees her baby like stuck under something, like you can lift hundreds of pounds that you would never be able to do in normal circumstances. But like adrenaline kicks in and you suddenly have this amazing strength because you're like want to lift something so bad. So it happens, but it's like such an interesting sort of exploration of that whole thing. And then my second thing is like, interesting that Father Damien is both a psychiatrist and like religion. Like, how do you like take both those two sides of you that can almost like science and religion and kind of like put those two together and like study those both? Seems interesting. Oh yeah, really? She did like physics and Orthodox Judaism. Cool.
Yeah. Wait.
Oh no. And then my last one is that, okay, so clearly in this one, like priests are like saviors, right? Which in like old times they were. But now we have such like a different relationships with priests, right? That there would never be a movie where like priests are like a saving person. Because now priests are like bad news. And obviously, very unfortunately, with the whole like pedophilia thing and all that stuff. But also the support of the Catholic Church, obviously, like wavering. You know, I was like talking with someone a while ago or recently about religion, like randomly, and we were talking about like how we were brought up as whatever, and we were Catholic, and we like as we went to church up till like pretty regularly until we were all kind of like in First Communion and had kind of done all that. We did CCD and all that, and then we became the family who only went on Easter and Christmas, and then we really just didn't go at all. And now nobody goes at all. So we was like this steady decline. Like our parents tried so hard to like raise us with the religion and follow that whole thing because they were both Catholic. And it just like, we just tapered. And I think that was a lot of families. And it's like, do you know anyone who goes to church now?
Only the weirdos. No, just kidding. Sorry, no offense. Yeah, but it's like as much as mom and dad like wanted us to do that, like they weren't religious people. Like, did we ever pray in our house? No. Did we ever like learn anything about Jesus or God from our mom and dad? No, nothing.
But I think that's how their families were.
That's how their families were. Not dad. I think dad's. I mean, he was. I don't know. They're just more traditional. I don't know. But yeah, it's just not. It's not our thing. Totally. Yeah, now it's like a priest. You're like, ooh, this is bad. This could be bad, especially after seeing The Keepers, amazing Netflix documentary, or Spotlight. You just have that bad association. You're like,
untrustworthy, right? Like there's not a lot of trust going into that with like that abuse of power because it's just like, you know, for like centuries that they just had so much control over people, and that even like fell into this century where you're talking about you have this power position and abusing it. And the worst part with little kids, I mean, that takes it to like a whole nother level. So yeah, there's just, I don't know. I just don't think like this would ever be made now. It's just, you'd be like, well, like priest is like sympathetic savior. I'm not sure that would like fly.
Well, they brought this concept back for the television show The Exorcist, which is on Fox, I think. And there's priests in that, and they're good guys, and so maybe it is possible, but only because it's tied to this story. I don't know. But yeah, interesting. Any other themes you needed to talk about, or?
Well, like thematic here.
Well,
sorry. So I like the like. Sort of parallels to Poltergeist, because that's the only other like horror movie that we've done so far. Maybe that's why I'm drawing them. Oh yeah. But I like how, again, well, this one obviously is more like direct churchy, right? So you're talking about like very like Catholic Church sort of more doctrines and explained that way. But this like option of a demon, right, and like how it exists and what it does and how it controls people. So I like in how the commonality of this one is like how basically like the demon, you can tell like can read people, let's say, and almost like in Poltergeist when she's like clear your mind, like it knows what scares you. In this one, the demon too like knows people and knows what will like freak them the fuck out. So in like Damien's case, he like turns into the mom and completely freaks him out, and like he basically like, well, he thought he like abandoned his mom, but really she was just old and he lived far away and he couldn't like check on her all the time. And then she ended up dying, and he just felt like this extreme guilt that he like couldn't be there for her. So the demon like turns into the mom and gets basically guilt tripping him. And it's just like fucking with his head. And then for the older priest, Father Marin, like you find out in the beginning that he has seems like a heart condition or like something, because he's like his hand's always shaking and he has this like little like Altoid case of pills, white pills. I don't know like what those pills are, but you can tell that I think like the demon like knew that he was like actually like physically very weak, just from a weak heart, let's say, and was gonna like do something to like, you know, fuck with that. And he did, and he killed him, right?
Maybe, but I also think that Father Marin like has seen this demon before, and I think like, well, he dug it up in Iraq, and there's supposedly like a scene.
The statue.
Yes, so he like recognizes that it's the demon. I think that just like traumatized him, and probably he has a history with this demon. I think there's like a prequel to The Exorcist, right? That came out a few years ago. maybe, and it talks, and I think it's like the first case of Father Merrin's exorcism, which like had to do with Pazuzu, and it was a boy that was possessed, like the story that William Peter Blatty based it on. So I just think it's been like a long time battle coming. There's that great shot in the very beginning where it puts Father Merrin and the statue of Pazuzu like on opposite ends of the screen, and then it's like their silhouettes. And it's just like the good versus evil, like the battle is soon to come kind of thing. It's just very symbolic. So a lot of people always bring that up. The two dogs fighting, symbolic, you know, all that fun stuff. Good times.
Good times. What else you got?
So you wouldn't think that we would have lines that we would use from this movie in everyday life, but you know what? We do. So one of our most frequently used lines is when Sweety or I has done something that the other one deems like upsetting, or like we're like, why whatever. We'll just accuse the other person, and one of us will just be like, why you do this to me, Dimmy? Why? Like when Sweety's like, we have to walk home. It's not that far. Why you do this to me, Dimmy? Why?
Or you forget something, or I forget something. Be like, oh, I like, hey, like, can you bring this over next time I see you, whatever? And then you don't, and I'll be like, why you do this to me, Damie? Why? And that mother is so cute, and it is very sad. And she lives in like a sad little squatty little apartment. It's just, its whole life is like really sad. But I really love that Father Damien character. He's like adorable. And forever, and Sweetie agreed with me, like I think we thought it was Gabriel Byrne. It is not.
Because Gabriel Byrne is in Stigmata, right? So yes. I think that's why we thought that, because we were like possession movies, religion, yeah. Like,
well, they look identical too. Let's be real.
Yeah, but in '74, so that guy must be like super old now, like compared to like Gabriel Byrne. Yeah. Totes.
He's adorable. And he's like we said, like so well rounded. Like, I mean, just a jack of all trades. He's like, I used to be a boxer, then I decided to be a priest, and then I'm gonna go to med school and be a psychiatrist. And he's like running the track, and he's like doing all this stuff. I mean, that guy stays busy. But he has like the saddest little apartment in like the priest dorm. And I'm like, what? This is fucking sad. Actually, no, I don't even think it's the priest dorm. It looks like a regular dorm. Because like one of the priests walks by and there's like kids like smoking.
Well, they could be like in theology school or something.
No, but it was like a woman in there. And like, I don't know. It's just like, I don't know. That whole priest thing is like strange to me. I don't know. They just like interact with everyone else. And I'm like, not how I've ever encountered priests, let's be real. But like we grew up in a very small town. There was like legit one priest there. Father Andrews, Father Clark. Where'd you go?
Father Paul. Wait, what was that?
Oh, it was one we hated.
No, it was the one we had like a mass debate about. We're like, Mom, what was that priest's name? The most recent one that I remember and that you remember? Father Roy? Yeah.
Oh, Father Clark was the one that was like really unfriendly and that we hated. He was kind of like fat. Father Andrew was the best.
Yeah. Baptized me. Yes. He's awesome.
We do this. The reason why everyone liked Father Andrews was because he did these like crazy fast masses, and he like spoke so fast just to get mass like done. Usually a Catholic mass is like pretty much on the dot in 1 hour. Father Andrews could do it in 45 minutes. He cut that shit down 15 minutes. It was the best. It'd be like, in the name of the Father and the Holy Spirit. Serious question. What is your favorite / funniest part about Mass to you? Okay. Well, I think the one is when the priest has to sing.
Yes.
Okay. So if you've ever been to a Catholic Mass, who's Catholic here? Yay, raise your hands. Raise your communion wafer. So the priest, like, so there's like, the Mass is super formulaic, right? So it's like the priest comes in, he says a prayer. It's like all formula. And then there's like a couple readings that change. Like there's 2 readings that change. And then he says a gospel, which is basically, if you're not Catholic, any other religion, it's like a sermon, right? So he can like wax and wane on anything. It can be very topical. It can be like whatever. And then there's the part where he blesses the host and then drinks the wine. But he's like at the middle altar thing, and he goes, do you remember how it goes? Shit. So it's like, so there's this part that he has to sing, and like if you're a great singer, like awesome, but I think most priests are not, so they'd be like "Da-da-da, in the community of the Holy Spirit forever and ever," and they have to like hold a note, and you'd be like, this is awkward.
And then it's God is rose, God has risen, Christ will come again.
Oh wait, the other part that I like dreaded during Mass though was the peace be with you. So there's this part of Catholic Mass where it's like, and like everyone give peace, whatever, peace be with you. So you have to turn to everyone in your row and go peace be with you, or in front and back. So you just, so if you're with your family in the pew, so you kiss, like you hug them or kiss them on the cheek, but for strangers you have to like shake hands, right? So you're like, peace be with you, peace be with you. Oh, it was like so awkward. And as little kids, it was the worst.
You'd like make eye contact with a weird old man. You'd be like, oh no. And then you have to do it. And you're like, eh. And then my other favorite part, or like, this is the reason I knew church was bullshit when I was little, is when they were like, listen to the angels ring the bells from the heavens. And then I see this little like shifty altar boy like bending down, picking something up and ringing it. He's ringing the bells. That is a hoax, okay? Listen, that is not the blood of Christ. That is wine or grape juice or something. Forget it. Forget it.
It's so crazy because it's like, as a society where we don't have like we have like traditions, but not ones that are like, maybe like, okay, everyone eats turkey on Thanksgiving, right? Like that might be one. Everyone gets a Christmas tree, whatever. But like in that Catholic Mass, there's like so many like things you just do. Like no matter where you went to Catholic Mass, like they would do it like that, right? And like and the cool thing about Catholicism is there are like really beautiful churches, and like the music is always really beautiful, and that part is like super spiritual. And like the readings are kind of like, like I don't even know, like I really get this. But I just like how it's like so formulaic. And like, remember the things that you would kick out to kneel on? So you wouldn't kneel like the first or the second, but you'd only kneel on like the third time. What was the part that you kneeled at? No, but there's only
like one praying part.
You pray though.
I don't remember. I just remember like
there's like a
flipping to the Psalms, and I could never find the Psalms fast enough in the book, and people would be starting to sing already, and I'd be like, I haven't gotten the page yet. 'Cause, you know, it's a stressful Mass sometimes. You just a lot of things going on. Yeah.
Remember the passing the money around basket?
The guy, the old man would come and like, this is the baskets with the giant handles that can go like all the way down the row, and they're like coming down, and Dad would always put like a 5 in. I'd be like, oh shit, we rich.
Or if you were like legit churchgoer like our grandmother, you would get these envelopes, and you would like have a check in there and just, or cash I guess, but you would like put it through the envelope and like, I know, stop wasting your money in the church. Oh my God. And I was always like, whoa, like how do you get to be a basket guy? Because it was always a guy. It was never a girl. And that's the thing. And like even the altar boys, it was always like these like kids in our community, like, oh, like the Varley brothers. Like they were all altar boys. But that has now changed because there's altar girls. And it's like, hells yeah, but no women priests.
Nothing get molested too. Just kidding. You know who was a basket person? The guy on the CCD bus who used to tell you exactly where to sit. He'd be like, you sit here, you sit there.
That's the best memory ever. Okay. So, okay. This is like literally the last we're going to talk about Catholicism. So we went to CCD. So CCD, basically Sunday school, not on Sundays. So you go on after school on Tuesdays. So what would happen? I can't believe there was enough Catholic kids that they like rolled up a bus to the elementary school. So for our school, East Elementary School, it was on Tuesdays. So this bus would roll up after school on Tuesdays, and you get on, and there's this old man who like, you couldn't just sit willy-nilly in the bus. Like the guy would be like, you sit here. And like, basically it was just like assigning seats, which was like so strange. So then we like roll up to the next town, which Orleans is where the church was. CCD was in the basement. So they would like get you down there, and then they would give you generic Sprite and generic Oreos and vanilla like Oreos. Iced oatmeal cookies, but like that Hydrox brand, which was like so inferior to the Oreo, like it's not even funny. It was a disaster. I hated it so much. I hated CCD more than anything. And you had these like little workbooks about like the Bible stories, and like, oh, be a good neighbor, and like all this bullshit. it was the most painful experience of my life. And you just did it basically to like get to communion, because then you'd be like, yes, I made it. But then you had like fucking so many more years to go.
Yeah. And you couldn't, but mom let you drop out. Let's go over this again. Where you got to drop out of CCD because you had ballet, but I had to go through that bullshit and do my confirmation. Sucked so bad. You need like a sponsor. It's like, what is this bullshit? When they like in the confirmation, they like the priest goes to each person like says, do you take like Jesus in you or whatever? And like I in my brain like flashed at that part like, oh my god, I masturbate all the time. Like I'm gonna be like lightning bolts coming down on the church are gonna kill me right now because I like did a bad thing, but I didn't. You're just frowned upon, I think. But it's yeah. So I didn't though, and I was like, church bullshit. I did. Forget it.
You're totally going to heaven, by the way. I just know it. Okay, so that's our 20-minute talk on Catholicism. Love to hear your thoughts, people. What a great religion. Can't wait to bring up my kids. Catholic, not. Okay, couple triv facts. Trivia. Okay, so did you know that this was the first horror film to be nominated for Best Picture Oscar? Yes. Can you name the other ones that thus far have been nominated?
Silence of the Lambs. Yep. Winner. Jaws. Yep. And The Shining? No. I don't know.
The Sixth Sense.
The Sixth Sense. Good flick. No. Alien? No. No. Nuts.
And Silence of the Lamb, only one to win. So very cool. Very cool. Along those same lines, this is the highest grossing R-rated film of all time if you count inflation. Cool. Wow. Very cool. But there were 9 people who associated the film with died very recently after it. So as with all sort of spooky films, there tends to be like a curse kind of a thing. Well, Poltergeist, remember that was one that they had a lot of spooky things. Well, I just feel like that's the thing that's associated with like there's got to be other ones. But like 2 of the people were like super old. So you're like, does that really count? And like there was a fire or something and they're like, oh, that was kind of spooky. I mean, people are just like looking for spooky shit with spooky movies. So like, let's not forget that. And then I thought it was interesting. So the demon voice of Reagan. So Linda Blair was nominated for an Oscar for supporting actress for this. She didn't win, but she was nominated. And they like, actually there was like some controversy because like the voice that she did wasn't hers. So like, does that really count like as an actress when like your voice is not yours who's doing it? So the woman who was like an older actress who did the voice, and she had actually been nominated for an Oscar at another point in her life, I guess. Like, so she was no like schlub. And to get that very demon, like scary voice, she consumed raw eggs, chain smoked, and then drank a ton of whiskey to achieve that sort of like gravelly, sort of like demon-esque voice. And apparently she had a drinking problem, so she fell off the wagon to do it and like had to have a priest like with her all the time. And they actually like constrained her to like get to her voice to a point where like it would seem like she was constrained and stuff like that. Yeah. So crazy.
Fucking nuts. Meanwhile, some of us just have the demon voice in us this whole time. Your mother sucks cocks in hell. See? It's so good. Or I can go even lower than in my classic one that's like, hello, it's me.
That's my favorite one.
This is the demon talking. This hurts my voice, but I like it.
My friend Hillary Burkett and I used to like prank call boys and be like,
hello, is Ronnie there? Yes, thank you.
Like, call them. And one time we did it, and like this kid, Tom Marvin, was like, some lady with a smoking problem called me. It's pretty great. We're pretty awesome. Yep. No big deal.
Like in Scream, like the video, the box thing that they have to like fuck up their voices. It kind of sounds like that, but you're doing it au natural. So good for you. Yeah, this movie is like very well, now that I've seen it so much, like it doesn't really scare me, but it definitely like is very impactful. Mm-hmm. It's like, whoa, like that's some like fucked up shit. And like the end is like interesting because they like So, like, Father Damien jumps out the window and he does that. Okay. Oh, and I mentioned this. So, the actual stairway, so it's this, like, long set of stairway in Georgetown, cement stairs, that Father Damien, like, falls down. And it's, like, super tragic because you, like, it's the sort of thing where you jump out a window and you break your neck and then you fall down the stairs. So, it's, like, just, like, a lot of injury, let's say. So he ends up like in a heap at the bottom of the stairwell, like his head like completely covered in blood, and there's like blood everywhere. There's blood on the stairs, like it's like a mess. And there's that. I mean, that's an actual stairway that exists in Georgetown. And my friend Brendan went to Georgetown University. I went to visit him when I was a sophomore in college, and he's like, "Oh, want to see the stairway? Want to see the stairwell?" So we like go like late at night to go see the creepy Exorcist stairway, and it was really creepy. I mean, obviously it's like still there and it looks just like that. But anyway, so like Father Damien like goes and like his little priest friend like happens upon him like when he's down there, and there's a whole crowd. They're like, "Oh my God, call an ambulance," whatever. And his friend's giving him like last rites and stuff, and like clearly he's like already dead. And then it goes to the next scene where they're like packing up the house and they're moving out of there, and Reagan is like fine. She doesn't remember anything. So then they find like the little medal that like Reagan pulled off of Father Damien when they were like struggling at the end, and she like gives it to the priest, and he like just kind of like goes back to the spot where Father Damien died. I don't know. It's just like so sad. And you're like, but there's this part where like Reagan like looks at the priest's collar, and it's like she does remember like a tiny bit that like someone with that symbol is the one who saved her, right? And she gets like a little bit like, whoa, and then gives that guy like a kiss on the cheek, right? So she does remember like a little bit or something about like, wow, that guy saved me. But yeah, I miss Damien, man. He was a good egg. Miss him.
Yeah. So I would highly recommend any fans of The Exorcist who have not seen The Exorcist 3, or if you are more of a book person, to read the book. It's such a good movie, and it's super underrated, and it has some of the creepiest scenes in like any horror movie. George C. Scott is in it. Pretty cool. He plays the cop in the original Exorcist. It's the same character as that cop, Kinderman or whatever. So that's his character in the third one, and it's more of like a detective kind of murder mystery that like turns supernatural. A lot of people, so it's like a serial. They base it after the Zodiac killer. He's called the Gemini killer, and like it's very cool, but with a demonic element. The end is kind of cheesy, and they kind of like flubbed that in post and added a bunch of shitty things. So the end's kind of stupid, but most of it is really awesome. So I highly recommend that. Also, if you haven't read the book, The Exorcist, also read that. There's some additional tidbits that are super spooky, a lot that they didn't put in the film, so I highly recommend that. And just like, lots of stuff.
Yeah, I want to check those out. Like, I love reading like books, like seeing a movie so many times, and then like reading the book version that it was actually based off of you would think like, oh man, well, I clearly know the story, like this is not going to be interesting, but like the books are always so. I remember like going when I would like really try to freak myself out, going to the public library, East End Public Library, and reading the first or couple pages of Jaws, Peter Benchley. And I would just, because it was like one of the first shelves, it was like B for Benchley. And I would go in there and like sit down, and I was like a little kid. I was like 12. No, I did that. Well, I must have told you about it, and then you copied me because like, I was older than you. Andre, this is when I was 10 or 12. I did not read your blog. And I would go and sit cross-legged and like read the like first couple pages, and it was like, I've never read that book all the way through. Like, freaky. But because like all good stories start with books, I hate to say it. It doesn't go in reverse. Don't get in those like, what is that called when it's like a movie but then they make books out of it? Fan fiction? No. But they'll do like stupid book like sequels like of a book out of like the movie plot. It's like Star Wars, and there'll be like Star Wars books that like extend the plot. I don't know what that's called. Anyways, what is up, guys? This is not a Christmas movie, but it was completely enjoyable, and I really like this film a lot. Yeah.
Cool. I like spicing things up. If you would like to come and talk about The Exorcist, do come and find us on Twitter at the Sweety Club, or on Instagram at Large Marge Sent Us. Thank you, as always, for listening. Bye. Bye.